top of your head?
I do have some figures, but can I come back to that, because I was just wanting to make these general points.
Carry on, sir.
No, the second point I was going to make is that we've done very limited work on dealers and used vehicle sales. Most of the work we've done has been on with the OEMs and with governments and so on. The dealer area is distinctly lacking in detail in Australia as far as data is concerned. The third thing, and this really comes to what Clay has put up on the screen, his list of questions. I will try and answer those questions for you, but they will be largely impressionistic at this stage. And when we've gone through this in perhaps the last 5 minutes, I'd like to suggest a couple of things about where you go from here on this particular exercise. But I think perhaps, Clay, if we go through your questions now, if that's where you are heading.
That's good for me, thank you.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, do you want me to start with the questions now, or trying to answer the questions?
Yeah, let's talk about the questions, thanks.
Yeah, well, the first on compliance, one of the things that Australia does have in common with the United States is are a federation of states. So therefore we have state laws and federal laws. And sometimes we have complementary laws so that joint action can be undertaken. There's a body which is a joint federal state body called the Australian Competition and Consumer Council, and it looks at issues concerning and so on at a national level. At a state level, generally speaking, the question of vehicle dealerships is potentially at both.
Yes, that's perfect. So yes, just carry on, if you don't mind.
To your second question, and remember the answers are essentially impressionistic, because I'd need to be a fairly expert lawyer to answer them in absolute detail and absolute certainty. But I think there is little, if any, red tape that's necessary before you start advertising in Australia. Automotive direct mail, I have not seen much incentive-driven direct mail from Australian auto. Generally, what I've seen is follow-up by the OEMs on previous purchases or people on their mailing lists, but it's not very frequent, not very intense. Postal regulations. I don't think there is any restriction on letters with regular mail, although they do not deliver those to houses that no junk mail or no unsolicited mail on their letterbox. I in fact have a link later in the day, Clay, to the Australian Post about their posts. The other thing that way to go is what we in Australia call junk mail. I'm not sure what you call it in US, but it's essentially advertising supermarket route. Lending. Australian auto dealers largely have more than one lender that they offer and they range through ones from ones owned by banks, and banks mean a different thing in Australia to the United States. We only have very large banks and relatively few of them, and they're national, generally speaking, through to ones which we would consider subprime credit lenders. And my understanding is that dealers, as in the United States, will offer a level of lending to the potential customer based upon their credit standing.
Yeah, can you guys hear me? This
To people of higher risk, but whether them as higher risk, I just can't say.
Jeff, you want to add anything to that?
No, I understand, and I understand why Richard can't speak with absolute certainty regarding particular questions, because again, like most things, it's relative to each dealership. Certain dealerships have the flexibility to roll the dice, as we say,
Yeah.
on a higher risk mom and pop store. Those 20 cars that couldn't afford to that gross. So yes, I am incredibly in for this so far. This has been a wealth of information. Thank you, sir.
Now the sixth question is stats average gross unit per copy on used vehicles. One of the things we do at Australian Automotive Intelligence for results, it's not easy to get the information because many dealerships are grandfathered under old law and do not have to lodge financial reports with the authorities. And there was obviously somebody very clever in an accounting firm that got these dealerships to apply for the grandfather clause back in the mid to late 1990s, and so the information is fairly limited. Even in the ones that we can get, there is very little information about their split between different levels of activity, what their sales and profit is on new cars, what their sales and profit is on service, and empty from the industry is that dealers do not make much money on new cars. That the competition for sales of new cars, and I'm talking here about more the mass brands, not the Mercedes-Benz and BMWs and so on, but the more mass brands, that the profit on a new car sales might only be a few percent typically, but that the service profitability is very high for dealers who look after their customers, and also that the gross profit on used vehicles is another significant source of profitability. I could only really guess at the figures, but my impression from talking to people over time and not necessarily taking detailed notes is that on say $500 plus typically, but that on a used vehicle it might be more 3 to 4 times that, obviously depending upon how successful a dealer is in getting the price they want. The seventh question I simply can't answer in any sense of a figure on it, but one of the things that's happened in Australia, and I'm sure in the United States, is that much of the marketing of used cars, and for that matter new cars, has transferred to the web, and there is a dominant company in Australia called carsales.com that most of the both dealer and private advertising for used vehicles go through, and dealer advertising is virtually disappeared from the television and particularly from the newspapers or from print generally. Most of the advertising which is done on television and in print is actually by the OEMs themselves. Now, the average number of used vehicles at a dealership in Oz, again, the answer to that, but the we have some figures that enable me to estimate the used car sales in Australia, and a quick calculation I've done suggests to me that used car sales are about 2.2 million a year. That is, that there's approximately 2 used car sales for each new car sales. That out of that million, approximately 1.3 million is what we call private sales. That is sales that do not go through dealerships. So they might be businesses which are disposing of their small fleet and they sell them directly to individuals, or individuals selling to other individuals their used vehicles, which leaves about 0.9 million vehicles a year which are who go through dealerships. Those figures, earlier figures just here at the moment, but those figures have changed over the last 15 years or so. Back in, say, the year 2000, then the dealer sales, the sales through dealers would have been dominant, and the private sales would have been perhaps about 40%, at 30 to 40% of the total. The reason for the change is, one, that there was a change in the taxation system on cars, which edition in Australia, but I'd obviously stand to be corrected on that.
Okay.
No, understood.
That's cool.
And that's all the questions covered, I hope.
Okay, cool. Jeff, do you want to talk about any of those points?
Sure, absolutely. That was a wealth of information that shed a lot of light on a lot of questions. Obviously, the 2000 to 2016, traditional marketing diminishing prevalence, I guess, as the internet and evidently carsales.com has kind of become the staple of that market. Clay, my initial first impression, just going through my notes, is essentially there is opportunity here. There is opportunity through direct mail, essentially at the price points we can create it, given the volume and the size of our facility. And as you know, if we're going to ship to Alaska, we might as well ship to Australia and Asia Pacific. So I'm excited. I'm excited about the opportunity. Richard, it sounds like you have a wealth of information. The junk mail, that was interesting that they pretty much have a junk mail for direct mail. Clay, that was interesting to me. That's nice. Here in America, we don't have that option, and I think FedEx has a financial incentive to allow that. So it sounds like Australia Post, that's owned by the federal government. Yes, Richard?
Yes, Australia Post is owned by the federal government, and that's the item that I will send Clay the link to about direct mail. But interestingly, it also has some coverage of the compliance type issues on that as well. So in a sense, you get a bit of an answer to two questions out of that.
Okay.
But the other junk mail is the private type, which I would judge to be relatively ineffective.
Yeah. What we call junk mail in New Zealand is a private organization just puts together bulk mailers for things like grocery stores and some department stores and drops them in your letterbox twice a week. Most of that gets thrown in the rubbish. So, this is what we're talking about. What you're saying is saturation mail is a different method than what we call junk mail. It's using the Postal Services Company.
Now, I know that time is just about running out, Clay. Do you have to finish it in 3 minutes, or you cut off?
I'm not on a hard stop. I wanted to go into this next section, which is where we want to get 20 to 40 dealer principal phone interviews over the next 3 months.
Well, can I address that? I feel that we certainly don't have the resources or not do the sort of task that you would want in answering a lot of these questions authoritatively and so on. And I thinking this through, I think there are two possible ways for you to go in order to get assistance in what you're doing. First of all, there are some accounting firms in Australia which have divisions which specialise in working for dealers, and so therefore they would have significant information and understanding which we would not have. One example is an international company which I'm sure you're all familiar with, Deloitte.
Sure.
That has a special division that looks after automotive, and it looks after dealerships. It wasn't originally owned by Deloitte, but they acquired it from another company, or they acquired another company which included it. So it has a long history. There are 2 or 3 others that do it as well, and so what I will do over the next few days is send you a short list of those companies.
Thank you.
The other possibility, and this was something that I suggested to you indirectly, was that we often use individuals who have industry experience to do work for us on behalf of clients. Now, I've been scratching my brain since we last spoke about who they might be, and I've only really come up with one really clear idea, and I've been unable to contact that person over the last 24 hours, so I don't know whether that's a goer. But I will make further inquiries of some of my colleagues and ex-colleagues to see if I can come up with somebody who might be able to guide you more readily. And I would envisage that it would probably be on the basis that you contract them directly to undertake what work.
Okay. I appreciate the lead there.
Coming through me, but that's something that in a week or two's time I'll be able to give you better guidance on.
Appreciate it. Well, awesome. It does sound like there's an opportunity in Australia, especially there's no competitors. They really run staffed events, or a very few competitors, just kind of underwater. So thank you very much, Richard, for your time. And if we were to consider working with you further, how do you, in your mind, would you see best serving the organization and with your strengths?
Can I take that on notice, Clay?
Sure. But we would like to continue working with you somehow, and appreciate you putting some effort into this.
Well, certainly I would think that you or some of your colleagues will obviously need to come to Australia at a relatively early time, and if there are things in the lead up to that whoever you have doing work for you can't answer, or you feel you want additional discussion about, then I would be available on that basis. But look, as I say, let me take it on notice, and maybe you can take it on notice too, and think of the sorts of things that you might think I could do for you that would complement anything else that you have done.
Cool. Okay, great. And we're looking at coming over there probably in July. So
okay.
that's the we'll keep in touch with you up until that date.
Clay, after this conversation, I possibly could expedite that date by several weeks, if not months. Just Richard's knowledge of the industry, and just I'll be brief. I know we're running out of time. Our companies and our holding company essentially are just seasoned automotive professionals that can complement pretty much any dealership. Direct mail just happens to be our bread and butter and highly profitable. There's several different consulting, training, any different facet. Our ownership is former owners, dealer principals, leaders of their 20 groups in particular. They've been a part of Fortune 500 dealerships. So there's really no task too big for us, and our ambition, as you can tell, is sometimes a little overwhelming. So what I'll do, Clay, it sounds like Richard says figure out the best way to complement him and find the particular roles, and I'll set up essentially a short list itinerary, short-term, long-term, and we'll just go ahead and put this on paper about, Scott obviously wants to get boots on the ground there as soon as possible now that he knows there's a great opportunity. Because there's the restriction, and we won't aggressively. Here in America, Richard, it's the Wild West. It's almost like a race to the bottom, unfortunately, when it comes to advertising. Like who can be the most creative and who can get people to come down, and we literally throw away tens of thousands of dollars. It sounds like out there just traditional advertising is still effective. However, we can still be creative enough to where we can still hold these $5-6 grand profit points, and even if we don't, we can complement by number of vehicles. So there is immediate revenue opportunities for everyone involved. Clay, obviously, I'm gonna call Scott immediately, and I'll shoot you over an email. Is it okay if I copy you, Richard, on that email as well?
Yes, that's fine.
Great.
Perfect. So,
all right,
I'm
team.
good if you have any more questions.
No, I'm good.
Listen, just one word of warning to you about coming here in July. You'll be coming into our winter, which is relatively mild, but I would suggest you do not go and meet Clay in Wellington at that time of year.
See, great advice.
That is good advice, Richard.
Is the weather okay now? Like the next couple months?
Oh, yeah. In Australia, it's always good.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to get on the phone with Scott. Clay, thank you so much. Richard, again, thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
You too. Catch you later. Bye-bye.